Hello, hello, hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're in the heat of Phoenix, Arizona, and Arizona is either heaven or hell, and it's getting close to hell right now. But it's a dry heat, as they say. And we have a very special show today, as all of our shows are. But it's a man I tremendously respect. He's looked up to. There's the people that are just the pillars in any industry, and this gentleman is the pillar in this industry. And he's Rick Rule, founder of Rule Investment Media. And when he speaks, people listen. And we're going to be speaking about one of my favorite subjects today is precious metals, which is gold and silver. But it's not about that. And by the way, we don't recommend anybody, we're an information company. We don't recommend buying anything, although I think you're foolish if you don't. But anyway, the point here is that I just love the precious metals market, and we're going to go into why, if you haven't started, or if you have started, as they say, back up the truck. So this is Rick Rule, and Rick, welcome to the show.
Robert, thank you so much. I always enjoy our interviews, and thank you too for the Rich Dad, Poor Dad work you've done, particularly around financial literacy. I think you're the epitome of the Rich Dad. So thank you.
Thank you. 65. I was 18 or 19 years old or something, and Vietnam was on. And I went through flight school, went to military school, flight school, and was flying in Vietnam. And then 71, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So I'm sitting on this aircraft carrier, South China Seas, wondering what the hell are we doing here? And suddenly my rich dad sends me, I didn't realize this. He sends me a letter. He says, look out, look out, look out. So what happened? There's a snail mail those days. He says, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So this is 72 now by the time I got the message. It was August 15th, 1971. And he says, my rich dad basically said, if you can find any kind of gold or silver, buy it. So I'm flying, I was a gunship pilot. We flew off the carrier, and being Marines, we weren't the smartest guys on earth. And the North Vietnamese army had overrun the, I was looking for a gold mine on the map, reading the map of South Vietnam. The North Vietnamese had overrun the gold mine. So being Marines, we said, well, what the hell, let's just go for it. So we flew behind enemy lines to buy gold. And there was a little Vietnamese woman standing there. She was probably about 5'1", I don't think she went to Harvard or anything. She had red beetle teeth. And so we're standing in the middle of this village, the Vietnamese saying, who are these two whack jobs sitting here, my pilot and co-pilot. And gold was, I think, about $50 an ounce by that time. It had gone from 35 to 50. And I tried to get a discount. And Rick, do you know how far I got?
I can imagine.
Nowhere.
In effect, you thought you were trading money for an asset, and she thought you were trading money for money. So
she just kind of looked at my we're both college graduates. She goes, spot. Right. So what, a spot on my shirt or something? I had no idea. So Rick, that was my introduction to gold. So I think I'm going to talk to you about you call it the circus. They removed the debt ceiling. It's only gotten worse in 71, hasn't it?
Well, that's a really interesting lead in, Robert. I'm amazed that so many people were concerned about the politics of raising the debt ceiling, and people don't seem to be concerned about the quantum of the debt or the ability to service the debt, or more importantly, the impact of the debt on future generations of Americans. A review of the arithmetic, if you might indulge me, I think is worthwhile. At the federal level, we now have permission to take the debt, I guess, to $34,400 and something million. The first thing that people need to understand is that that's 12 zeros to the right of the furthest left column. I mean, it's an amazing number. But if you compare the on-balance sheet liabilities of the United States with the off-balance sheet liabilities, the net present value of the off-balance sheet liabilities, it gets scarier. For your younger listeners, Robert, if they look at pictures of you and I, they see what an off-balance sheet liability looks like. It's an old person. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, federal pensions. That number, the net present value, according to the Congressional Budget Office, handily exceeds $100 trillion.
So that's
So
the
the
old guys are going to are a liability of 100 trillion.
combination of off-balance sheet liabilities, non-balance sheet liabilities, note that's net present value, not gross value, exceeds $140 trillion. Now, it's interesting that JP Morgan Chase notes that the amount of private wealth which will be handed down to future generations is about $140 trillion, which is a different way of saying that the entirety of private inheritances is accounted for by the federal debt before state and local debt. And it's further important, I think, Robert, for your listeners to consider that we propose to service this debt, both on balance sheet and off balance sheet, with a budget that's in deficit $2 trillion a year. I don't know what your rich dad would suggest about further encumbrances if you were already over indebted, but I suspect I know the answer, and I suspect you might inform your listeners as to what that was.
Well, let me keep it. My rich dad, my poor dad was a PhD, went to Stanford, Northwestern University, Chicago, but that's why he was poor anyway. So, but my rich dad never went to school. So, I mean, he went to school up to 13. So he kept everything simple. He says that's like trying to pay what you're talking about with the debt and all this. That's like trying to pay your mortgage with your credit card.
Right, right.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Well, my own dad, stepfather, I remember telling me, one of the ways you get out of holes, you stop digging. And he went to Stanford, so, you know.
I don't think we can anymore. Have we gone beyond the point of no return?
I'm not sure, Robert. I'm of two minds. I'm astonished at the strength of the U.S. economy in the face of increasingly idiotic regulation, stupefying taxation, and debt. And I draw some solace from the fact that, well, two facts. One, youth movements. 160,000 people having been through the programs of Students for Liberty over time. Robert, when I was 18 years old, I couldn't spell libertarian. And now we got 160,000 junior von Mises running around, which makes me feel good. I also feel good, I need to say, with the continued impact of technology. The United States is still this wonderful creative culture where 5 or 6 pimply-faced kids in Sunnyvale can commandeer a garage and out pops Google or out pops Facebook. I guess what I'm trying to say is I remain hopeful that our individual creativity and tenacity might be able somehow to finance our collective stupidity.
Oh,
Uh,
jeez.
the
You are an optimist. I mean,
I mean, the alternative for that, Robert, would be for me to quit. And America wasn't built quitting. I think what you're doing, I think informing people of the fact that they are responsible for their own future. We are not responsible for their future. Telling people that the Commonwealth is not necessarily their friend, I think is extremely valuable. And in fact, it is grassroots efforts like yours and Students for Liberty that give me continued hope. Albert, go ahead.
What is Students for Liberty? I've never heard of them.
Students for Liberty is a libertarian students organization
Okay.
funded by old geezers like me, but run by the kids.
Okay.
And I'm delighted with the work they do. I'm delighted particularly when I juxtapose the knowledge I see in these young people with the knowledge that I had when I was their age. Now, maybe that's damning them by faint praise because I didn't know much. But I do find in movements like Students for Liberty and in the popularity of shows like yours, substantial cause for optimism. I must admit, when I divert from these sort of positive narratives to the arithmetic, I become less positive.
Well, you're far more positive than me, so it's an interesting time. Let me tell you, this is the way I look at it. This is what I was excited to talk to you about it. Like I said, in '72, I mean, I'm trying to buy my first gold, and I couldn't cut a deal. She would not discount gold. I just couldn't believe this. So I finally had to fly to we sail into Hong Kong, and I bought a Krugerrand, and I paid $50 for it. I still have that Krugerrand today. What the Krugerrand's worth probably how much today?
$2,000, I'm guessing. I haven't looked at spot. Well, it would sell at a premium to spot, even if you sold it back. So yeah,
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
thousand bucks. Yeah, nice return.
Yeah. So for years I've been saying to people, and then so today I took the largest gold mine in America public this summer. It was ODV out of Utah. And I've been a gold bug ever since because I'm still singing "We're on the Eve of Destruction" in my head, and I like silver and all this. And I tell people, look, just buy one silver. You know, here's a silver $50. I think I don't know what it was, about $35 or something. I said everybody can afford this, but they'd rather hang on to cash. And you know, when you hold the Krugerrand up, it was $50, and today it's $2,000 in cash. Rick, we can be optimists, but why can't people get the correlation between $50 and 2,000?
I think that's
Well,
important. When I look at my own personal portfolio, I'm the largest shareholder of Sprott, which is a financial services concern built around precious metals. A financial planner would say, Rick, you're insane to own any physical gold and silver. You're
yeah,
already
they
so
do.
leveraged to gold and silver, you
They do.
figuratively have it coming out of every orifice. But the truth is that I regard physical precious metals as insurance. And I
Yes.
must say, at age 70, seeing what I've seen in my lifetime, it helps me sleep nights and stay calm. And so let's assume, just for fun, that your listeners put 10% of their net worth in bullion. And let's assume, just for fun, that the price didn't go up at all, but it was a hedge. It was insurance against some of the madness around them. In truth, Robert, I need to say, I hope my gold and silver bullion doesn't escalate rapidly in
Right.
price, because
Right.
if it did, it would invariably be the result of circumstances that would make the rest of my life very unpleasant. And the truth is that my life is very pleasant.
Right.
I
Wait,
think,
wait.
as you said at the beginning of the show, it's very difficult for me to understand why somebody who can afford to save it all doesn't save partly in gold or silver.
Right. I mean, I agree 100%, but you just said something that's really important. Although I basically have tons of gold and silver in the ground, you know, so I have silver mines in Argentina and gold mines in Utah and China, but I don't want it to go up. If you know what I mean? Because if it did, I would need to get a gun and go back to Vietnam or something.
Yep.
Isn't that? I mean, that's how critical, you know, the song "Eve of Destruction." We're so critical right now, and I don't trust our leaders to get us out of it right now.
I would agree with that. And again, we should probably, in terms of the discussion, default to arithmetic. I won't replay the debt and deficit arithmetic because I already did it. But let's talk
Yeah.
about quantitative easing. Uh, Very recently, the government decided to bail out the banks and collaterally the depositors. And as I understand it, they created $1 trillion in bailout funds. Now, they didn't borrow it, they didn't have it. That was called quantitative easing, although they had some different name for it.
Right.
If you printed, Kiyosaki's and tried to buy houses or bread or things like that, they'd put you in prison. It would be called
Right.
counterfeiting. But if they do
Right.
it, it's called quantitative easing. Whatever you call it, making more currency units from nothing does not make the existing currency units more valuable. They are debasing the currency. It's important to understand that math. They just created $1 trillion worth of currency units that didn't show up as a liability, so it has to show up as debasement. Um,
Would you explain debasement? Because that's a very important word. Again, the
Yeah, I
word
mean, let's
definition.
assume that the value of the float of the US dollar, I don't know what it is, but let's assume just for fun it's $100 trillion. I have no idea what it really is. If they make another $5 trillion, by the way, the Fed's balance sheet is all debasement. If they create these new units out of thin air, backed by nothing, what they do is they reduce by the same quantum the value of the existing currency units. So if there were 100 trillion currency units, dollars in circulation, and they created 7 trillion new ones, which is the net of the Fed's balance sheet, they have debased the value of the existing 100 trillion by 7%. It's really, really, really simple arithmetic.
That means the cash in your hand has got less valuable.
Sure.
That's what debasement means.
Yeah, that's important. And I think the fourth thing, that people need to consider is the product of debasement, which is diminishment of the purchasing power, particularly in the value of savings. And by the way, I'm not telling people not to save. I'm just saying understand the arithmetic. If you buy a U.S. government 10-year treasury, they propose to pay you, I think it's 3.4% today, something like that, in a currency that the Congressional Budget Office suggests is losing purchasing power by about 7% a year. In other words, they guarantee to reduce your purchasing power by 4% a year compounded. Now,
that math is just too high for me.
It's pretty scary, isn't it? I mean,
they're
and by the way,
it's too hard for me.
they are using the CPI, and I don't want to get into a really ridiculous discussion of the CPI, but I want to leave your listeners with a certain understanding of the CPI. First of all,
Consumer Price Index, you guys.
Yeah, Consumer Price Index, allegedly a cost of living index. Now, when it suits them, they don't include food or fuel in the cost of living index.
Right.
Your listeners can look at me and tell that I like to eat. So an index that doesn't include food or fuel is not too relevant to me. But more importantly than that, Robert, and I'll never understand this, the CPI index doesn't include the cost of government. It doesn't include tax.
No.
That is certainly, unfortunately, part of my cost of living. The truth is that sustaining federal, state, and local government consumes more of the average family's income than shelter, energy, food, and transportation combined. So when you don't include taxation, both direct and indirect, in computing the cost of living, you have to be very concerned about the index. Now, to be honest with you, Robert, I think if I didn't have to pay the tax, I would complain less about the index. But that isn't on offer.
Yeah. We'll be right back.
Last month, reports of inflation hitting 9.1% sent markets into a death spiral. It's the steepest rise in the cost of living since 1981. Biden, Yellen, and Powell, they might need to check the definition of transitory because this spells disaster for tens of millions of Americans and their savings. At this rate, the dollars under your mattress will lose half their buying power by 2030. But Robert saw this coming. He's seen it before. He knew that equities would be crushed by inflation, which is why he recommends real assets like art. The same assets that outpaced the S&P 500 by more than double for the last 25 years. In fact, the last time inflation was this high, it did even better, appreciating by 33% annually according to the Masterworks All Art Index. The only problem, unless you're a millionaire, investing in art has been nearly impossible. But now, thanks to Masterworks, you can invest in arts like Banksy and Basquiat in just a few taps, and the results speak for themselves. Masterworks has delivered average net returns of 26.8% to their investors since 2019. And with inflation on the rise, demand for Masterworks is through the roof, and there's even a wait list. But our listeners can skip it by going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/CD.
Today's show is sponsored by Gold Alliance. If you're concerned about high inflation, looming recession, a troubled banking system, or out-of-control spending in Washington, this is an important message to hear. Because the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, many of those who failed to prepare watch their savings, investments, or retirement funds go down, while many with the foresight to own gold helped preserve their purchasing power. Gold even made some folks richer. Now we're facing several major crises at once, and experts say we may soon face even more economic trouble. So please don't wait. Learn the simple way you can diversify with gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind, even in uncertain times. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican Governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Find out why and visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. What they say is what inflation is a tax that you didn't vote for.
That's right.
Something along that line.
That's right.
And when Biden took the Keystone XL pipeline offline, I don't trust the dollar, Rick. I am the eve of destruction guy. So I'd rather invest in oil, physical oil, cattle, land, things they can't print. I'm in the if you can print it, I don't want it category. So when I was pumping oil at $30 a barrel when Trump was president, when Biden stepped in, his first act was to cut off the Keystone XL pipeline,
Right.
and oil went from 30 to 130. And then he blames Russia. Biden blames Russia for raising the price, or Saudi Arabia or something, going, we elected this guy. You know what I mean?
Ironically, Robert, for you and I, domestic producers, Biden, ironically, has been a friend.
I know.
Bad for the country,
Exactly.
but good for you and I. We don't have to compete with more efficient Canadian producers. And at the same time, that he is telling the major oil companies that they need to produce more in the near term to bring gasoline prices down, he's telling them that he's going to put them out of business in 2030. Telling the major oil companies that he's going to put them out of business in 2030 is not a way to get them to spend $100 billion to increase energy security. Ironically, for existing producers like you and I, he's maintaining a floor price for us.
Right.
I don't feel the need to thank him particularly, but it's an interesting conundrum. Robert, further on energy around math, the International Energy Agency suggests that the totality of the oil industry, including state-controlled firms, is underinvesting in sustaining capital to the extent of about $1 billion a day, $365 billion a year. They're doing that despite record high industry cash flows. What they do when they defer sustaining capital investments is that they impair in the out years their ability to produce. So as a consequence of these idiotic acts by way of the big thinkers, they're going to make the oil industry, including you and me, more profitable for longer. Right. It's a very odd circumstance that we face.
Let me rephrase what you said. They're just not reinvesting in more production.
Correct.
And all that's going to do is raise the price of oil. And, my degree is in oil. I went to Merchant Marine Academy in New York, and I sail for Standard Oil.
Right.
And when Biden took the Keystone pipeline offline, I made more money.
Right.
But he also made America poor.
Correct.
And that's why you can be optimistic about the debt and all this stuff. But My challenge, Rick, has been to get somebody to let go of the cash and say, convert some of that cash, like you say, to something they cannot print. Do you know what I mean? Have some silver. Oh, no, 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 no. The silver doesn't get any interest. I said, exactly what you said. Well, inflation's at 7 and they're paying you 3. Or 4. You're still losing 3. How come they can't get that, Rick? Why can't they get that?
I must say, as a consequence of the fact that I've been through several periods of illiquidity, that I still maintain some cash, knowing that I'm losing money on my cash.
No, I
I
understand.
I
But
regard the
why do they
negative
hang on to
interest.
cash?
I,
Why
I,
do people?
I regard the negative interest as an option premium.
Right,
Uh,
right.
what scares me, what really bothers me more than people's cash holdings, is people's insistence on holding long bonds.
Oh,
Or frankly, although I've benefited from this, sellers of real estate taking back fixed rate mortgages. The idea that you're getting paid 4% in a currency which is depreciating by 7 or 8% compounded it's odd. It's a guaranteed loss. My suspicion, and maybe you can help me with this, Robert, because you talk to more people on your channel than I do on mine. My suspicion is that people were influenced by the period 1982 to 2022, which were probably, with a couple of exceptions, the most benign economic times known to human being.
right.
Peace largely, declining real interest rates,
Yeah,
inclusion in the workforce. I
right.
think, I think in 2022 things changed.
Yeah, please listen to what Rick said. This is one of the most important things. We've come through one of the most prosperous times in history, and they were dropping interest rates, and everything was
Right.
kind of happy. Everybody was happy and going to buy and shopping and all this, and then it changed.
That's kind of why I think that your message isn't as common currency as it should be. I think that people were preconditioned by 40 years of benign economic climate to
Amen.
think,
Amen.
irrespective of the asset class, buy the dip.
And then what I say, Rick, is if your financial advisor is not over 50, don't listen to him, because I'm a financial planner. I'm 25 years old, and it's always been good. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my God, I could bring a new advisor here,
right.
because you and I have seen the ups and downs.
The decade of the 70s, I'm not saying that we're going to repeat it, but it was interesting. I remember I broke into investments in financial services really in 1970 as a young college student, trying to make my money make some money so that I could make ends meet. In 1970, we'd been through 20 years of pretty benevolent economic times after, World War II.
Right,
And most investors worldwide couldn't spell gold,
right,
despite the fact that it was a four-letter word. By
right.
1981, everybody could spell gold. Times of economic change, times of political turmoil are times when precious metals do well. And if you reflect on the fact that now we've been through 40 years of benign economic climate, and I'm not trying to say that the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket. I'm just going to say it's going to become more challenging. I think it would be useful to repeat your own message, Robert, which is to say, uh, if you are concerned about the direction of things, learn to spell gold before other people do.
Right,
The performance of gold in the decade of the 70s, relative to any other asset class available to you, was astonishing. No guarantee it'll
right.
happen again, but the circumstance would seem to be in place to make that an intelligent activity.
Well, the other thing, Rick, is, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't silver the all-time high was $50?
Silver, I remember very well at the beginning of the decade of the 70s, silver was $1.50. And at the end, it was $50. And if you can afford to speculate, the performance of the silver stocks was even more astonishing. One that unfortunately I didn't buy, Coeur
Right.
d'Alene Mines,
Oh
went
God.
from 10 cents, not a typo, to $65, not a
Yeah.
typo. And
Yeah.
sadly, it did it all without me. Um, the silver stocks, if you look at an asset class around precious metals that are hyper volatile, that's the
Right.
most volatile. Doug Casey says that the population of silver stocks in the world and their combined market cap is so small that when the generalist investor absorbs the silver narrative, wonderful quote, the outcome is like trying to siphon Hoover Dam through a garden hose. uh, this is not for the faint of heart. Your listeners
No.
who want to pay attention to that have to be prepared to take real risk, absorb volatility, and do some homework. But if you want a hyper volatile asset class around precious metals, the silver stocks, well, not for the faint of heart, is
No.
that asset.
Yeah. So I don't play any stocks. I only own stocks that are companies I take public.
Yep, smart.
Yeah, that's all I do. I mean,
Control your own destiny. Yeah.
I'm a hardcore entrepreneur.
Yep.
I don't trust Wall Street, the Fed, or the Treasury. And I just trust what I can see, touch, and feel.
Yep.
But this is my point here. Like this, silver was $50 back then. And today you can still buy a silver coin for less than it was, 50 years ago? Is that when it was?
Well, and that's on a nominal basis. Remember that we've probably experienced 65% deterioration in the dollar.
Yes.
So if a silver coin was $50 then and $22 now, understand that that's a nominal value.
What does nominal mean?
Nominal means that doesn't take into account the depreciation of the dollar.
Right.
Your $22 now probably has $5 worth of borrowing power when measured against the dollar in 1980, when you value that coin at $50. So in real terms, silver has probably fallen 90% in price.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 70%, but you get the arithmetic.
I don't get the higher math in my brain here. I never did well in school. That's why Rick is a banker and I'm a bank teller. I was never good at math and all this. I just knew that $50 was less than it was when I was a kid.
A lot less.
And we're going to need to go to a break. But the point here is this: I want to get to is I get into fights. I was talking to this friend of mine. He's got 3 kids and all this, and he's a hardcore saver of cash. And I said, why don't you just buy a silver coin? It's $35. Whew, man. He would rather save cash than a silver coin. So, see, my whole point is, Rick, all I do is when I have cash flow from properties.
Right.
So I have income. I have lots of income. And most of my friends, their problem is what to do with the cash. Does that make sense to you? So naturally there's Battle Bank, they can put it in their investments. But it's getting to the point we have these 2 classes of people, rich and people with cash and people with no cash.
Right.
And that's where we're at today. And that's where, in my opinion, on the eve of destruction. And I just can't understand why people hang on to cash when you look at the stats, look at the math. I mean, doesn't it kind of baffle you too when you talk to people? Why are you hanging on to that cash?
Well, as I say, I do hang on to some cash.
No, I do. I have cash.
Because I need liquidity.
Right.
My question is why anybody in their right mind would own a bond, a fixed income instrument longer than 3 years in duration. That astonishes me. I can understand why you, as a property owner, might want to have a 30-year fixed mortgage, but it's beyond me to understand why somebody would own one.
Right. I see real estate as a bond, if you know what I mean.
I
highly leveraged bond.
Well, we can deal with that after the break. I love your lessons around real estate. I think they're extremely responsive. The idea that the replacement value of your asset goes up so new people can't compete with you. Your return on capital employed goes up as rents go up, but your cost of capital stays fixed. Money is made in the delta between the return on capital employed and the cost of capital. And what you've done in your own lifetime should be of real value as a lesson to your listeners.
And there's one more thing I like about real estate is I don't pay taxes. It's called appreciation, depreciation, amortization.
The
Magic words of love.
the idea that you can finance out with no tax consequence is astonishing to me.
Well, do you remember when Trump was running against Hillary, and Hillary attacks Trump and says, "And you don't even pay taxes." And Trump says, "Because I'm smart."
Right.
I think he lost half the population right there.
Yeah, we're running that risk here, but we don't talk to that half. So
No, but it's how people are. Unsophisticated is a word.
right.
So I have another question for you. Another argument in the world. We want to talk about this central bank CBDCs. And one more thing is what I'm the optimist on, as you talk about technology and things changing. I have gold and silver, but I like silver because it's an industrial metal as well as a precious metal. And industrial means it's consumed. So while we're producing silver, it's also being, it disappears into junkyards and stuff like this. Every computer dumps silver. So that's I'd like to ask your point of view on what is the future of silver? Is it, with technology going up, does it consume more? Or am I just smoking weed on this one?
I think the debate comes down to whether you're forward-looking or rear-looking. Traditionally, gold has been a store of wealth.
Right.
Gold and silver have both been mediums of exchange.
Right.
That would argue that as an insurance asset, gold, because of its history, is a more reliable asset. Looking forward, 1 billion ounces of silver a year go to silver heaven.
Right.
Now, gold is different. It goes from a hole in the ground called a mine to a hole in the ground called a vault.
Right. Everybody, please listen to what Rick just said. That's the biggest difference between gold and silver.
Right.
Okay, please. Silver is disappearing.
But silver goes away, so you
Right.
could have a silver shortage. And a lot of silver gets recycled. It used to get 90% used to get recycled in photography. But now that we're doing things like making silver panels, the price of silver and the technology isn't high enough to recycle that silver so far from silver panels. The most important emerging use for silver is as a germicide in sewage treatment and water treatment. And in that application, the silver absolutely gets used up. So it's important to note, as you have stated, that in addition to being a medium of exchange and a medium of exchange that's simultaneously a store of wealth, there's an industrial utility around silver in electric applications, in solar and photovoltaic applications, and importantly, in water and waste processing applications that gives silver a much different impetus. In fact, I would argue that as you talk about the energy transmission and battery, the new age metals, that silver's applications in microelectronics and photovoltaics make it as important a discussion there as other minerals like nickel and lithium.
Right. So again, that's my question. You talk about how you're optimistic about technology and new inventions and all this stuff. But for me personally, being a layperson, I just see it as that they're going to keep using more silver. Am I off base?
No,
on base?
I think you're very on base. I think that silver is inherently more speculative than gold, and I don't think speculation's a bad thing. I am partly a speculator, so
it's called buy low, sell high. You know what I mean? It's called, like people say, "Well, are you buying Bitcoin?" I said, "I did."
Right.
And I bought Bitcoin at 6. But will I buy it today? Probably not.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm equating silver to Bitcoin when it was 0. I'm going, and it's being consumed.
Yes,
that's what shocks me right now.
Another thing that your listeners who are interested in silver need to understand is that most silver doesn't come out of silver mines. It comes out of gold mines, copper mines, lead mines, zinc mines. And what that means is that if the silver price goes up, it doesn't necessarily stimulate more production of silver. the copper price has to go up, the lead price has to go up, and the zinc price have to go up. Apparently, as I understand it now, between 17 and 18% of the new silver supply in the world comes from silver supply, comes from silver mines. The rest come as a byproduct of other minerals production. So when you think about the various uses of silver and you think about the inelasticity of supply, the potential, not the guarantee, but the potential for outsized gains as the demand for silver increases more rapidly than the industry can supply it. It's a very interesting speculative setup.
Yeah, like the word speculative, like when I talk to people about Bitcoin, by the way, what's his name? Peter Schiff went to Bitcoin finally. I mean, that's
I didn't see that.
God, yeah, he converted, he switched sides and all this stuff, but
Okay.
I'm cracking up. So Rick, there's a couple of questions. You know, you have Battle Bank and all this stuff, and you're getting heavily into, should I say, the financial services business. And with all your experience, I'm kind of interested in what you're thinking. You know, you and I are about the same vintage and all this. We should be taking a break. But I think you and I are working harder now than ever before. And there's so many questions I want to ask you. But the next question I'm asking for your wisdom on is, what do you think about CBDCs? Like my friend Jim Record is talking about Executive Order 14067, where Biden says they're going to come out with a Fed coin. What are your thoughts on that?
For me personally, the CBDC, central bank digital currency, is the single scariest development that I'm aware of. I guess subordinated to nuclear weapons, but only to nuclear weapons. The idea.
Rick, I hate to interrupt you, but I went to this AI conference, you know, artificial intelligence.
Right.
And I was speaking at a group today. I'm kind of a wise ass. That's why I flunked out of school all the time. But somebody said, "What is AI?" I said, "A college degree." I cracked it. But anyway, I was at this conference and I met this young woman who was one of the lead investors in AI. She's probably 26 years old. And I was talking to her and she says, AI scares her more than anything else. And so plus you say CBTC is dangerous. We got AI coming. And we have election coming up. What else could scare the heck out of us?
Well, I guess for me, it's the combination of social credit scoring, AI, and the central bank digital currency. The idea that the government can monitor who we are online and other places, assign our behavior values according to their own precepts, and then if they want to, cancel our money.
Right.
That's very scary. I watched 3-4 months ago when Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada objected to the political activities of the truckers. Right. And he retroactively made contributions to them illegal and froze the bank and brokerage accounts of Canadians who disagreed with his political policies. Right. And I look now at the social credit scoring that takes place in the People's Republic of China. And the idea that a government could object to your exercise of freedom of thought and freedom of speech and object to the extent that they could cancel your wealth. And who among us would put that past Xi or Trudeau or Biden, or for that matter, Trump? Nobody I know. I would prefer a world where Robert Kiyosaki was free to think and free to express himself as he believed, and where Robert Kiyosaki's money and wealth belonged to Robert Kiyosaki and were not subject to the whims of the executive and Congress.
Well, so this is, you set it up perfectly, because this is my logic system. You know, like I said, since 72, when I was flying in Vietnam, I said, you know, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, they started printing quantitative easing. My idea has been, if I save silver in green boxes, and those are just silver coins. And I had a friend of mine, he's an attorney, because I convinced him to save silver and gold. He says, yeah, I got them at my house. I said, You stupid SOB. You just told everybody to come visit you, Don't keep your gold and silver at your house. That's ridiculous. But anyway, my theory is right now, I share the same concerns, AI, technology, uncertain geopolitical terms, and what happened in Russia just this week with them threatening Putin. For years, I just have green boxes hidden in a private vault safe,
Right.
tons of it. And my reason for thinking this is I want to test, I don't care if you say this is really stupid logic, but if they go to CBDC, I can spend the silver coins. I can get off the system of the federal government. So I can walk around and say, hey, Rick, I got 10 silver coins. What do you give me for it? You don't know what, they can't be traced. I like the idea of silver coins being untraceable or not followed by the government. How's my logic on that?
Absolutely flawless. Sadly, absolutely flawless. I think another point, Robert, you talked about the practical impacts, and I was struck as you were talking about it. I was struck thinking about a young man in 1970, 1971, 1972, a young patriot, maybe misguided, but a young patriot. Were you fighting for a world where the government could cancel your freedom of speech, where a government could cancel your wealth? When you think about the concept of politics today, I think one of the things that the government is doing is degrading the memory of hundreds of thousands of people who have fought and died for freedom in the United States. And it's just disgusting to me.
Well, you're hitting a big subject because today, as we're speaking, Arizona State University, I taught in an entrepreneurs class last summer at Arizona State. And then Dennis Prager, myself, and my Dr. Gopalan, he's a cardiologist and a doctor of acupuncture. We did an event in Arizona State called Health, Wealth, Happiness, subversive stuff.
Nice. Nice.
Professors came after us. They fired anybody who had anything to do with us. These are the professors, Rick. 37 of them. I was on Fox News yesterday. They're not me, but the executive director who got fired from the honors program. This is the teaching honors kids, and the professors were threatened by us teaching health, wealth, and happiness. So your question is saying, what did we fight for? We fought for our freedom. And we've lost it. And so that makes me, the green boxes of silver and coins and all this stuff. I don't trust my government at all at this moment. I think we're Gestapo state, electronic.
As I say, for me, other than perhaps nuclear weapons, the scariest technological application in the hands of the state is this idea around CBDC. It's just absolutely disgusting.
So, Rick, I've taken more of your time. Would you explain, we're on the eve of destruction. You start battle bank. As the Mexicans would say, ¿Qué pasa? What the heck are you up to? Are you going back to war or something with the bank?
Well, some of it's personal, Robert. As you know, I retired, and retirement doesn't suit me.
No.
My mind needs to be stimulated or anesthetized, and working is better for me than drinking. That's a personal response. But there's never been a better time to go in the banking business. This is my 7th de novo bank. So the first part of the answer is that this same management team and I started a bank in 1998 called Everbank, addressing a need in the market that wasn't met by existing banks. We built it from $0 to $28 billion in AUM and then sold it. It was a nice exercise, and the customers loved us. After we sold it, the customers began to email us saying, our bank has left us. An entrepreneur like you or I, when a market segment reaches out to us and there's a need, it's instinctive that we fill it. So what will Battle Bank be? I would argue, Robert, that it'll be a sanity-based bank. It'll be a bank with real money in it. It will be a bank that if they use derivatives, it'll be to hedge credit rate risk, not to trade. It will be a bank that understands that your money is your money. Rather than having 15 savings products, 5 of which pay no interest, we'll have one savings product. You can write checks against it or not, as you choose.
Wow.
And by the way, you'll be able to have a money market account in over 20 currencies. You'll be
Wow.
able to buy CDs in over 20 currencies. You'll be able,
Self-directed? Self-directed?
yes, sir.
I mean, I
And
just,
speaking of self-directed, Robert, you'll love this. We believe your IRA is your IRA. So your IRA can own a LLC, and you can, in your IRA, legally own rental properties, single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, small commercial properties. Why should I tell you what you have to invest your IRA in? And then on the lending side, I've been a lender my whole life. I used to describe myself as a used money salesman. We propose, as a key line of our business, to lend money to investors against physical gold and silver held in segregated accounts.
Wow.
Right now, there's about $30 trillion in the U.S.,
Wow.
$30 billion, pardon me, in the U.S. in bullion held at Brinks, Loomis, and Viamat. Nobody
Wow.
wants to lend against it. Now, I happen
Wow.
to believe that gold and silver are good collateral. They're liquid. This is why I'm in the banking business. The banking business is a huge business, and in many senses, the banks have forgotten who their customer is. I'm not going to tell you the bank, but I went to a branch of a great big bank that I've done business with since the 1960s. Went into the branch, very nice branch manager. And when I talked to her about savings products, she pointed me to a white service phone, I guess to connect me to India. She didn't know about her savings products. So what benefit did the branch offer me? What the branch does is it adds over 1% to the cost of funds for the bank. At our bank, like our last bank, our branch, is going to be your phone. Because we don't have this multiplicity of useless branches, we can have very high quality bankers that you can talk to on the phone. We'll answer the phone by the fifth ring, and you'll talk to a human. You won't talk to an answering machine.
That'll be different.
You won't have to wade through 15 savings products. There will be one. If you want to own a duplex in your IRA, our answer will be yes. If you want to borrow money against physical gold and silver, our answer will be yes. We aren't going to try to be all things to all people, but we're going to try and do 7 or 8 things either better than anybody else or do 7 or 8 things that nobody else does.
Okay. So let me ask this question, Rick. So here I am. I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona. I want to become a customer of Battle Bank. What do I have to do?
Go to battlebank.com and sign up. And we will have you on the pre-opening list to distribute information about our products and services as soon as the FDIC gives us the green light.
Right.
Alternatively, you can go to ruleinvestmentmedia.com. There's a drop-down form, and I should talk about that, by the way. Any of your listeners who care what I have to say about resources can go to ruleinvestmentmedia.com, list their natural resource stocks, and I'll personally rank them. In the comment section there, if you care about Battle Bank, just write in bank, and I'll make sure you get the information.
Okay. Well, Rick, thank you. I've taken about 20 minutes over time. I really appreciate it. Like I say, ladies and gentlemen, when Rick Rule speaks, people like me listen. The people who swear are on the eve of destruction. I've paid close attention to Rick. Has made me a lot of money. And I really appreciate your service as an educator to the world, as well as being a great, inspiration to the world.
Well,
so
likewise,
Rick,
I would suggest that you're the rich dad to hundreds of thousands of people across the country, and so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.